This is an assumptions question. The conclusion is that the manners of description suggest that language affects mental perception of physical reality. The missing link is between all the information presented in the argument and the conclusion that the manners of description suggest that language affects mental perception of physical reality. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice is that it should strengthen this conclusion through a valid assumption which fills the missing link and must be necessarily true for the argument to hold. Before we move on to the answer choices, let's look at the argument carefully. This is a bit of an abstract argument, but basically it talks about European languages and Navajo language and says that in European languages, abstract objects as well as geographic landmarks are described in terms of the object's resemblance to familiar objects, whereas in Navajo, abstract objects and geographic landmarks are described in specific geographic terms. Please note that the argument talks only about languages and abstract objects as well as geometric terms, whereas the conclusion talks about mental perception of physical reality. So the missing link is between abstract objects and geographic terms and mental perception of physical reality. In this context, let's look at the answer choices. Answer choice A. The argument mentions that in European languages, geographic landmarks are detailed with respect to the landmark's relation to an everyday object. So, if there are some European languages that describe geographic landmarks in terms of geometric properties, the way Navajo writers would do, it simply indicates that these languages are exception to the general European languages. However, this answer choice doesn't suggest anything about whether language affects the perception of physical reality. So this answer choice is just additional information and does not strengthen the conclusion. Also, this answer choice does not have to be true for the conclusion to hold. So this answer choice cannot be a valid assumption. So let's eliminate this answer choice. Answer choice B. This answer choice says that most people describe geographic landmarks either in terms of the landmark's relation to familiar object or in terms of geometric properties. So basically this answer choice says that the description of geographic landmarks does not likely have a third way of representation. However, this answer choice doesn't suggest anything about whether language affects the mental perception of physical reality. So this answer choice is just additional information and does not strengthen the conclusion. Also, this answer choice does not have to be true for the conclusion to hold. So this answer choice cannot be a valid assumption. So let's eliminate this answer choice. Answer choice C. This answer choice says that not all Europeans and Navajo speakers refer to the landmark's relation to a familiar object or the landmark's geographic properties. If this is so, it basically talks about some exceptions or a third way of talking about a landmark. However, this answer choice doesn't suggest anything about whether the language one speaks affects the mental perception of physical reality. So this answer choice is just additional information and does not strengthen the conclusion. Also, this answer choice does not have to be true for the conclusion to hold. So this answer choice cannot be a valid assumption. So let's eliminate this answer choice. Answer choice D. This answer choice says that this scholar also studied at least some speakers of other languages. This piece of information doesn't suggest anything about whether language affects one's perception of physical reality. So this answer choice is just additional information and does not strengthen the conclusion. Also, this answer choice does not have to be true for the conclusion to hold. So this answer choice cannot be a valid assumption. So let's eliminate this answer choice. Answer choice E. This answer choice says that the description of geographic landmarks is correlated with the mental perception of physical reality. The argument mentions that the description of geographic landmarks is different in European languages and in Navajo. So basically the argument talks about a correlation between languages and description of geographic landmarks, whereas this answer choice talks about the correlation between the description of geographic landmarks and mental perception of physical reality. So taking these two pieces of correlation together, it can be suggested that language affects how one mentally perceives physical reality. So in other words, this answer choice fills the missing link and strengthens the conclusion. Also, this answer choice has to be true for the conclusion to hold, because negating this answer choice would mean that the description of geographic landmarks is not correlated with mental perception of physical reality. In such a case, the link between language and mental perception of physical reality would be attacked, and hence negating this answer choice would weaken the conclusion. So this answer choice indicates a fair assumption. E is the correct answer choice.